Welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris. I'm a veteran with a disability rating. I'm a prior veteran service officer, and I'm a current VA claims rater. I wanted to talk to you guys today about the idea that the claims process is subjective. Yeah, let me just acknowledge, yes, it's one of the frustrations that myself and other raters often have when we talk about what frustrates us about our job, is that it can often seem subjective. Now, it's not because the law is subjective. The law wasn't written to be subjective. It's not even because the M21, which is our more or less our manual to interpret the law and help us do our jobs, it's not that that's subjective. It's that the process itself of taking a human being and weighing evidence, both from the perspective of the examiners that make the at least as likely or not at least as likely decisions, to the raters who evaluate that, to weigh the rationale, to ask for clarification, to ultimately make the decision for whether or not the veteran is at least as likely. That is a very subjective process. Now, it's nice when the evidence is overwhelming. For instance, you're a veteran that served in Vietnam, clear evidence of Vietnam in your record. Excuse me. So you have all the presumptions of Agent Orange or any of the other locations I know that came along with the PACT Act that acknowledged that: Thailand, Cambodia, Guam. Let's just say there's overwhelming evidence that you have an Agent Orange presumptive. There's overwhelming evidence that you have prostate cancer. You have all the medical diagnostics to prove it. That is a very easy decision to connect for you. Or let's say you're a Gulf War veteran and you have sinusitis, you have rhinitis, you have IBS, and the examiner gives a diagnosis to either confirm your diagnosis that they see in your medical records that you've provided or that we've gathered for you from a VA medical center, or they are diagnosing it on the day of your visit. That is presumptives are very easy decisions to make for you. And most of my own claim as a veteran, most of those were made through presumptives. But let's talk about when it's not easy. When you're trying to connect something that isn't a presumptive, but maybe you have certain evidence that you're trying to convince the VA and the medical examiner that you see that there is a connection. For instance, you had one ankle injury in service in 1985, and here it is 2025, and you say your ankle's sore and you've got a left ankle sprain. That is a very hard claim to connect to your service. I think you can understand that. How many years have passed? 40? And maybe there's zero chronology. But let's say your medical professional says, yeah, it is at least a likely. I see an ankle injury in service, and he has an ankle injury now. It's at least as likely connected to service. I can't just say, yeah, of course. First of all, it wasn't a chronic condition in service. Now, if you had 2 or 3 episodes of it and they're saying it was a chronic condition, that's different. Chronic conditions are much easier to connect. But here's where the subjective part comes in. Let's say a VA claims rater is an advocate at heart and all they care about is connecting veterans. Or even worse, they're a lazy claims rater and they just are going to do whatever the medical professional says so they can get onto their next claim so they can meet their production quota. I can't do that in integrity. I've been hired to weigh evidence. I've been hired to evaluate the rationale of the medical professionals. I know that is frustrating for some of you that have had denials and have been denied. But let me tell you, sometimes it works out in your favor. But for instance, a VA claims rater that looks at evidence that look chronic, but because your medical professional said, no, it's not least as likely, it's been 40 years. Well, I'd say, clarification, please. That looked like a chronic condition in service. Please explain how that chronic condition in service and that chronic condition now is not at least as likely based on the evidence. And often they'll change their mind because you've just shown them as a claims rater, hey, the evidence is there. Like, what are you doing? Or vice versa. And I have to do it a little bit more diplomatically when it might end up as a denial. I'm just saying the rationale doesn't make sense to me. And it's my job to say it doesn't make sense and to ask for clarification. In the first example where you twisted your ankle one time in service on a PT run, and there's no complaints of ankle injury when you left service 2 years later or any further treatment. And here it is 40, 45 years later, and all that medical professional says is, yeah, it's connected. Well, I've got to question that. I know that hurts, guys, but I have got to question that. I've got to say, look, your rationale isn't just that it's at least as likely when it's within the realm of medical possibility. I've used that phrase before. I use it a lot with medical professionals. It's not just within the realm of medical possibility. To meet the burden, which is at least as likely, the evidence has to be equal with one another. You don't have to have more evidence than is equal, but if you have less or far less evidence than is equal, the rationale is insufficient. And so often I'll push back on those, and then they'll bring back a response to say, yes, I'm resorting to speculation, or I would be resorting to speculation to make that it's not at least as likely. Now, I don't take any joy in getting a medical professional's at least as likely. That's going to help a veteran get connected with service and have to question their rationale, but that is my job as a VA claims rater. And I know that hurts some of you. At the end of my day, I have to lay my head on the pillow and go, did I make decisions that were made with integrity and honesty? Now, I could be wrong sometimes. So could the medical professional. But at the end of the day, if the evidence is there and the medical professional can demonstrate that the evidence is there by how they're explaining their rationale, we're going to easily go along with that. If they tell me that they see something in service that is a chronic condition, and so when the medical professional gives me some evidence that makes sense, I'm going to always go with their opinion. But when their opinion seems to be overly advocative and makes no sense, I'm going to have to push back on that. But that's how it works, guys. You have a human being that has to weigh evidence. It's not just a question of, oh, I've got all my private nexuses. I went to this attorney's or this claims website, and they hooked me up with this doctor that they have on retainer, and he gave me all these private DBQs and private nexuses, so I should be good. We're still going to weigh that evidence, and often that evidence is insufficient because they're using generalities. And I feel like they know this, and they're ripping some of you off. And some of you have been in this situation where you've gone to seek help outside the VA because you're like, damn it, the VA didn't give me a fair shake. And you know what? Maybe you didn't get a fair shake. Like, I'm going to spend my money out of my pocket to go to this website that's going to take the first 6 months of my award if I win and all my retro. Well, that's okay. That's your choice. Yeah, and there are gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are supposed to be the VA claims raters and the medical professionals that see you. Now, I'm going to do all I can to connect veterans to service. Deny if you must, grant if you can't. Sure, I'm going to try to grant. I am pro-veteran. I'm a veteran. I've hired veterans. I've worked with veterans. My whole life is wanting to take care of veterans. But let's be honest, as veterans, we don't deserve the world just because we serve. I don't speak for the VA. I speak as a human being that has to weigh evidence. Look, when I was a cop, I had a lot of frustrations as a cop because a lot of times we're making judgment calls about whether or not a crime's been committed and that person committed the crime. Do I have probable cause to arrest? Yes, I do. Bring him in to see the detectives, to see the captain that's going to prosecute the case. And he's like, I don't think I have it beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think we can meet our burden to convict him. Let's go for a plea bargain. So they go into court and they try to get a plea bargain to some lesser issue than what we arrested him for. And sometimes that frustrated us. But honestly, it was because we didn't feel we could meet the burden of proof to convict. And it's no different in any line of work where someone is weighing evidence. Guys, this is the process. If you wanted a perfect process, you need a perfect human being. There is no perfect human being. Even if you had artificial intelligence weigh the evidence, let me tell you, it would go much more against you than the human factor which goes for you. So understand this is a bit of a subjective process. It's not subjective because we don't care about veterans. It's not subjective because you don't matter and your service doesn't matter, or you served a day versus 10 years. The medical professionals are making sometimes subjective opinions. The VA claims raters are making subjective opinions. And let's just hope most of the time it works out in favor of the veteran that really has earned it, really deserves it. I'm doing this because I care about you getting the right information. So here's my advice. You don't feel like you got a fair shake, ask some people, some trusted voices in your life, some other veterans, get their opinion. Go to a veteran service organization, ask for their opinion. But if you feel like you're in the right, if you feel like you've got a condition and you're not getting a fair shake, yeah, appeal it. If you feel like you want to pay for an attorney and it's worth it to you, just know this. There's a lot of cabals of doctors out there that are dishonest, and there's a lot of attorneys ready to take your money in a heartbeat. I'm going to get up every day and I'm going to do my job as unto the Lord, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. For those of you that have been working hard to connect your claim, keep working hard to connect your claim. Sooner or later, you're going to find either a medical professional that agrees with you, a VA claims rater that agrees with you, and good for you when you get it, because you've earned it. You know you served in harm's way, or you know you served faithfully, even if it wasn't in harm's way, and you had conditions, or you have secondary conditions related to those conditions, and you've earned it. Go get it. And I'm going to help you. If I get your claim and I rate it, just know I'm going to do what's fair, but I'm going to give you everything that you have coming to you. And for those of you that are feeling like, look, it's a jump ball, well, go for it. If it's a 50-50, if you're trying to get sleep apnea secondary to your PTSD, I don't care if 4 people said no, half of them still say yes, and that's okay, because there are connections. Even I see that. For those of you that have a secondary condition that you've been told by two of your private doctors that had 25, 30 years of practice, there's a connection, and your VA examiner says no, fight that. Fight that tooth and nail all the way to the victory that you've earned. That's all I got to say today, and I'm sorry I've been offline for a few weeks, enjoying my family, enjoying my life, but I guess I'm just feeling frustrated today and feeling like, yeah, we need to just acknowledge it can be subjective, but hang in there, hang tough. And for those of you that stick with me, I hope sometime I can have a little bit better advice for you. Until then, y'all take care.